Inside 217. A week and a half later, 2 feet of snow lay white and crisp and even on the grounds of the Overlook Hotel. The hedge menagerie was buried up to its haunches. The rabbit, frozen on its hind legs, seemed to be rising from a white pool. Some of the drifts were over 5 feet deep. The wind was constantly changing them, sculpting them into sinuous, dune-like shapes. Twice, Jack had snowshoed clumsily around to the equipment shed for his shovel to clear the porch. The third time he shrugged, simply cleared a path through the towering drift lying against the door, and let Danny amuse himself by sledding to the right and left of the path. The truly heroic drifts lay against the Overlook's west side. Some of them towered to a height of 20 feet, and beyond them the ground was scoured bare to the grass by the constant wind flow. The first floor windows were covered, and the view from the dining room, which Jack had so admired on closing day, was now no more exciting than a view of a blank movie screen. Their phone had been out for the past 8 days, and the CB radio in Ullman's office was now their only communications link with the outside world. It snowed every day now, sometimes only brief flurries that powdered the glittering snow crust, sometimes for real, the low whistle of the wind cranking up to a womanish shriek that made the old hotel rock and groan alarmingly, even in its deep cradle of snow. Night temperatures had not gotten above 10 degrees, and although the thermometer by the kitchen service entrance sometimes got as high as 25 in the early afternoons, the steady knife edge of the wind made it uncomfortable to go out without a ski mask. But they all did go out on the days when the sun shone, usually wearing 2 sets of clothing and mittens on over their gloves. Getting out was almost a compulsive thing. The hotel was circled with the double track of Danny's flexible flyer. The permutations were nearly endless. Danny riding while his parents pulled. Daddy riding and laughing while Wendy and Danny tried to pull. It was just possible for them to pull him on the icy crust, and flatly impossible when the powder covered it. Danny and Mommy riding, Wendy riding by herself while her menfolk pulled and puffed white vapor like dray horses, pretending she was heavier than she was. They laughed a great deal on these sled excursions around the house, but the whooping and impersonal voice of the wind, so huge and hollowly sincere, made their laughter seem tinny and forced. They had seen caribou tracks in the snow, and once the caribou themselves, a group of 5 standing motionlessly below the security fence. They had all taken turns with Jack's Zeiss Icon binoculars to see them better, and looking at them had given Wendy a weird, unreal feeling. They were standing leg-deep in the snow that covered the highway, and it came to her that between now and the spring thaw, the road belonged more to the caribou than it did to them. Now the things that men had made up here were neutralized. The caribou understood that, she believed. She had put the binoculars down and had said something about starting lunch, and in the kitchen she'd cried a little, trying to rid herself of the awful pent-up feeling that sometimes fell on her like a large, pressing hand over her heart. She thought of the caribou. She thought of the wasps Jack had put out on the service entrance platform, under the Pyrex bowl, to freeze. There were plenty of snowshoes hung from nails in the equipment shed, and Jack found a pair to fit each of them, although Danny's pair was quite a bit outsized. Jack did well with them, although he had not snowshoed since his boyhood in Berlin, New Hampshire. He retaught himself quickly. Wendy didn't care much for it. Even 15 minutes of tramping around in the outsized lace paddles made her legs and ankles ache outrageously. But Danny was intrigued and working hard to pick up the knack. He still fell often, but Jack was pleased with his progress. He said that by February, Danny would be skipping circles round the both of them. This day was overcast, and by noon the sky had already begun to spit snow. The radio was promising another 8 to 12 inches, and chanting hosannas to precipitation, that great god of Colorado skiers. Wendy, sitting in the bedroom and knitting a scarf, thought to herself that she knew exactly what the skiers could do with all that snow. She knew exactly where they could put it. Jack was in the cellar. He had gone down to check the furnace and boiler. Such checks had become a ritual with him since the snow had closed them in. And after satisfying himself that everything was going well, he had wandered through the ark, screwed the light bulb on, and had seated himself in an old and cobwebby camp chair he had found. He was leafing through the old records and papers, constantly wiping his mouth with a handkerchief as he did so. Confinement had bleached his skin of its autumn tan, and as he sat hunched over the yellowed, crackling sheets, his reddish blonde hair tumbling untidily over his forehead, he looked slightly lunatic. He had found some odd things tucked in among the invoices, bills of lading, receipts, disquieting things, a bloody strip of sheeting, a dismembered teddy bear that seemed to have been slashed to pieces, a crumpled sheet of Violet Lady's stationery, a ghost of perfume still clinging to it beneath the musk of age, a note begun and left unfinished in faded blue ink. Dearest Tommy, I can't think so well up here as I'd hoped. About us, I mean. Of course, who else? Things keep getting in the way. I've had strange dreams about things going bump in the night. Can you believe that? And that was all. The note was dated June 27th, 1934. He had found a hand puppet that seemed to be either a witch or a warlock. Something with long teeth and a pointy hat, at any rate. It had been improbably tucked between a bundle of natural gas receipts and a bundle of receipts for Vicky Water. And something that seemed to be a poem, scribbled on the back of a menu in dark pencil. Medoc, are you here? I've been sleepwalking again, my dear. The plants are moving under the rug. No date on the menu and no name on the poem, if it was a poem. Elusive, but fascinating. It seemed to him that these things were like pieces in a jigsaw, things that would eventually fit together if he could find the right linking pieces. And so he kept looking, jumping and wiping his lips every time the furnace roared into life behind him. Danny was standing outside room 217 again. The passkey was in his pocket. He was staring at the door with a kind of drugged avidity, and his upper body seemed to twitch and jiggle beneath his flannel shirt. He was humming softly and tunelessly. He hadn't wanted to come here, not after the fire hose. He was scared to come here. He was scared that he had taken the passkey again, disobeying his father. He had wanted to come here. Curiosity was like a constant fishhook in his brain, a kind of nagging siren song that would not be appeased. And hadn't Mr. Halloran said, I don't think there's anything here that can hurt you. You promised. Promises were meant to be broken. He jumped at that. It was as if that thought had come from outside, insectile, buzzing, softly cajoling. Promises were made to be broken, my dear red rum, to be broken, splintered, shattered, hammered apart. His nervous humming broke into low, atonal song. Low, low, scoop-to-ma-loo, scoop-to-ma-loo, my door. Hadn't Mr. Halloran been right? Hadn't that been, in the end, the reason why he had kept silent and allowed the snow to close them in? Just close your eyes and it will be gone. What he had seen in the presidential suite had gone away, and the snake had only been a fire hose that had fallen onto the rug. Yes, even the blood in the presidential suite had been harmless. Something old. Something that had happened long before he was born or even thought of. Something that was done with. like a movie that only he could see. There was nothing, really nothing, in this hotel that could hurt him. And if he had to prove that to himself by going into this room, shouldn't he do so?
Curiosity healed the cat, my dear. Red rum, my dear. Satisfaction brought him back safe and sound. From toes to ground, from head to ground, he was safe and sound. He knew that those things are like scary pictures. They can hurt you, but oh my god, what big teeth you have, Grandma. And is that a wolf in a blue beard suit? Or a blue beard in a wolf suit? And I'm so glad you asked, because curiosity killed that cat, and it was the hope of satisfaction that brought him
up the hall, treading softly over the blue and twisting jungle carpet. He had stopped by the fire extinguisher and put the brass nozzle back into the frame, and then he had poked it repeatedly with his finger, heart thumping, whispering, "Come on and hurt me. Come on and hurt me, you cheap prick. Can't do it, can you? Huh? You're nothing but a cheap fire hose. Can't do nothing but lie there. Come on, come on." He had felt insane with bravado, and nothing had happened. It was only a hose after all, only canvas and brass. You could hack it to pieces and it would never complain, never twist and jerk and bleed green slime all over the blue carpet, because it was only a hose. Not a nose and not a rose, not glass buttons or satin bows, not a snake in a sleepy doze. And he had hurried on, because he was the White Rabbit. Yes, now there was a white rabbit out by the playground. Once it had been green, but now it was white, as if something had shocked it repeatedly on the snowy, windy nights, and it turned old. Danny took the passkey from his pocket and slid it into the lock. Loo, loo.
The White Rabbit had been on its way to a croquet party, to the Red Queen's croquet party. Storks for balance, hedgehogs for balls.
He touched the key, let his fingers wander over it. His head felt dry and sick. He turned the key, and the tumblers thumped back smoothly.
Off with his head, off with his head, off with his head. This game isn't croquet, though the mallets are too short. This game, boom, straight through the wicket. Off with his head.
Danny pushed the door open. It swung smoothly, without a creak. He was standing just outside a large combination bed sitting room, and although the snow had not reached up this far, the highest drifts were still a foot below the second-floor windows. The room was dark, because Daddy had closed all the shutters on the western exposure 2 weeks ago. He stood in the doorway, fumbled to his right, and found the switch plate. 2 bulbs and an overhead cut glass fixture came on. Danny stepped further in and looked around. The rug was deep and soft, a quiet rose color, soothing. A double bed with a white coverlet, a writing desk.
Pray tell me, why is a raven like a writing desk?
By the large shuttered window. During the season, the constant writer,
having a wonderful time, wishing you were here,
would have a pretty view of the mountains to describe to the folks back home. He stepped further in. Nothing here, nothing at all. Only an empty room. Cold, because Daddy was heating the east wing today. A bureau, a closet, its door open to reveal a clutch of hotel hangers, the kind you couldn't steal. A Gideon Bible on an end table. To his left was the bathroom door, a full-length mirror on it reflecting his own white-faced image. That door was ajar, and he watched his double nod slowly. Yes, that was where it was. Whatever it was, in there, in the bathroom. His double walked forward, as if to escape the glass. It put its hand out, pressed it against his own. Then it fell away at an angle as the bathroom door swung open. He looked in. A long room, old-fashioned, like a Pullman car. Tiny white hexagonal tiles on the floor. At the far end, a toilet with the lid up. At the right, a wash basin and another mirror above it, the kind that hides a medicine cabinet. To the left, a huge white tub on claw feet, the shower curtain pulled closed. Danny stepped into the bathroom and walked toward the tub dreamily, as if propelled from outside himself, as if this whole thing were one of his dreams Tony had brought him. That he would perhaps see something nice when he pulled the shower curtain back. Something Daddy had forgotten or Mommy had lost. Something that would make them both happy. So he pulled the shower curtain back. The woman in the tub had been dead for a long time. She was bloated and purple, her gas-filled belly rising out of the cold, ice-rimmed water like some fleshy island. Her eyes were fixed on Danny's, glassy and huge, like marbles. She was grinning, her purple lips pulled back in a grimace. Her breasts lolled. Her pubic hair floated. Her hands were frozen on the knurled porcelain sides of the tub like crab claws. Danny shrieked, but the sound never escaped his lips. Turning inward and inward, it fell down in his darkness like a stone in a well. He took a single blundering step backward, hearing his heels clack on the white hexagonal tiles, and at the same moment his urine broke, spilling effortlessly out of him. The woman was sitting up, still grinning, her huge marble eyes fixed on him. She was sitting up. Her dead palms made squittering noises on the porcelain. Her breasts swayed like ancient cracked punching bags. There was the minute sound of breaking ice shards. She was not breathing. She was a corpse, and dead long years. Danny turned and ran, bolting through the bathroom door, his eyes starting from their sockets, his hair on end like the hair of a hedgehog about to be turned into a sacrificial ball. His mouth open and soundless. He ran full tilt into the outside door of 217, which was now closed. He began hammering on it, far beyond realizing that it was unlocked, and he had only to turn the knob to let himself out. His mouth pealed forth deafening screams that were beyond human auditory range. He could only hammer on the door and hear the dead woman coming for him. Bloated belly, dry hair, outstretched hands. Something that had lain slain in that tub for perhaps years, embalmed there in magic. The door would not open, would not. And then the voice of Dick Halloran came to him, so sudden and unexpected, so calm, that his locked vocal cords opened and he began to cry weakly. Not with fear, but with blessed relief.
I don't think they can hurt you. They're like pictures in a book. Close your eyes and they'll be gone.
His eyelids snapped down, his hands curled into balls, his shoulders hunched with the effort of his concentration.
Nothing there, nothing there, not there at all, nothing there, there is nothing.
Time passed, and he was just beginning to relax, just beginning to realize that the door must be unlocked and he could go, when the year's damp, bloated, fish-smelling hands closed softly around his throat, and he was turned implacably around to stare into that dead and purple face.